What's up and welcome to FPL Today. I'm your host JNO. Welcome to the channel and welcome to another preview for one of the group stages in the World Cup. And today we're looking at Group B, which has the likes of Portugal, Spain, Morocco and Iran. So a lot of big players in this group that could do some big things, and of course potentially with the two smaller teams some points that most people won't be getting. But to be honest, it would be a big surprise if Portugal and Spain don't come out of this group in first and second. But before we get into this video, if you want World Cup fantasy football, this is the place to be. So consider hitting that subscribe button and hitting that notification bell so you're notified when my videos go up on YouTube, and also when we do some live streams for the World Cup fantasy football as well. And also, before we get into the video, just a quick note. I'm still waiting for the official World Cup fantasy football game to come out by McDonald's and FIFA, but it still hasn't come out yet. There are various other versions you can play. You can do Sun Dream Team, I believe Telegraph have one as well. There's also Fantasy iTeam, which is a mobile app which has a version of the game. There's plenty of ways you can play. However, I've always planned to focus on the official World Cup fantasy football game, and it's still not out. And the reason for me focusing on that is because I know everyone can play it, no matter where you're from in the world. So that's why we're still waiting for that. So let's get into Group B and the teams and what players we should be picking from which squads. Now, first of all, we're going to start off with Portugal, who of course have the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo, but also a lot of other good players like Guedes, Andre Silva, William Carvalho and others that we could potentially be looking at for our Fantasy World Cup teams. Portugal actually qualified with relative ease for the World Cup with a record of 9 wins and 1 loss, scoring 32 goals on their way to the World Cup and only conceding 4, which is a fantastic return. Of course, the World Cup qualifying is going to be easier than a World Cup itself, but considering two of the teams in this group, we could potentially be seeing something similar to these kind of returns in those two games. And they got 7 clean sheets out of 10 games as well, which is a great return. Cristiano Ronaldo, of course, spearheaded the qualification for the World Cup with 15 goals in 10 games. And that is almost half of Portugal's goals during qualification. Add 9 goals from Andre Silva and you can see there are 2 places that most of the goals have come from for Portugal in the lead up to this World Cup. Also, we can add to that Portugal have won all but one of their qualifying matches since 2014 when Fernando Santos, their manager, took over, as well as winning Euro 2016. So they've had an incredible run of 4 years winning the majority of their games. And despite that, I still think, apart from Cristiano Ronaldo, a lot of people are going to be overlooking Portugal assets for this World Cup. The one worry I do have is with their defence, with the likes of Pepe, Jose Fonte and Bruno Alves all being relatively old and potentially being something that could be exploited by pacey forwards in Portugal's run in the World Cup. And a side note to all this, Ronaldo needs 7 goals to become Portugal's all-time leading goal scorer at the World Cup. And this could potentially be his last major hurrah in a World Cup. So he may be pushing for 7 goals or more just to try and get another one of those records for his record book. Now, of course, I could read out Cristiano Ronaldo's stats to you, and that would be the easy thing for me to do as someone trying to give World Cup fantasy football advice. But I thought I'd try and look at 2 other players that could potentially do well in this World Cup from the Portugal side that should be a lot cheaper on your budget. The first one is Andre Silva. He didn't actually get that much game time at Milan, but he did appear a lot in the Europa League. So we are looking at the Europa League stats, and in that he had 8 appearances, scoring 6 goals, shots per game at 2.1 and an average of 7.05 in the tournament. Not too bad considering he wasn't getting a lot of game time. And of course in the qualifications, like I've already said, he scored 9 goals for Portugal. So Andre Silva could come in relatively cheap because of his lack of game time, but could still be very important to Portugal's run in the World Cup. And then we have Goncalo Guedes, and I apologise if I butchered the pronunciation, but in the La Liga he managed to get 27 appearances with 5 goals and 9 assists, with a shots per game at 1.8 and an average rating of 7.16. I'm pretty confident Andre Silva will start for Portugal. Goncalo Guedes may be debatable depending on the formation that Portugal do play in the World Cup. But those two look very promising to me as options in the World Cup fantasy football game. Next we look at Spain, and Spain actually had a better qualification than Portugal, which is unfortunate for Portugal, but they've just got to deal with the hand that they've been dealt. They got a record of 9 wins and 1 draw with 36 goals scored and 3 goals conceded with 7 clean sheets as well. And I mean, when you look at the team overall, Spain have to be one of the favourites to win this World Cup with a great goalkeeper in form like David De Gea, a defence and midfield full of class. There is questions about their attack, however. Morata, of course, not finishing the season as strongly as he'd like at Chelsea, and Diego Costa not exactly setting the world alight on his return to Atletico Madrid. Spain have also employed a false 9 before, which could be something they do again. And they do have the likes of Rodrigo, who could come in and maybe score some goals. He's been quite consistent in La Liga over the last few years, but there is question marks around the man that will lead the line. We can take solace, of course, in the fact that 36 goals scored means there will be goals in this Spanish team. However, apart from Italy, they didn't really have stiff competition in their group. That being said, they have recently thrashed Argentina 6-1 in a friendly, and the likes of David Silva and Isco look very, very promising in this side. Speaking of David Silva, he's the first player we are going to focus on as we look at Spanish players. He's of course had 28 appearances for Manchester City in the season just gone with 9 goals and 11 assists. His shots per game is at 1.9 and his average rating at 7.58, and under the current manager's reign, I'm not going to try and say that name, but under his reign, he has scored 11 goals, the most of any Spanish player under this current manager. And then of course we have Isco as well, who's also looked very, very good for Real Madrid recently. 21 appearances, 7 goals and 7 assists, with shots per game at 1.6 and an average rating at 7.16. He looks like he could be a focal point for the Spanish team and could be involved in a lot of what they do good at this tournament. So Isco, if he comes in cheaper than David Silva, could be a good option, or vice versa if David Silva is cheaper. But I definitely think there is good choices in that Spanish midfield. And now we move on to some of the smaller teams, and we look at Morocco, who had a record of 3 wins and 3 draws to qualify for this World Cup. Goals for, they managed to score 11, and clean sheets they got 6, and they didn't concede a single goal. However, despite the fact they're unbeaten, they did draw 3 games 0-0. The team has a very, very strong defence, but against the likes of Spain and Portugal, I'm not 100% sure they can keep that kind of record up. And up front, they look very inconsistent. Again, against the likes of Portugal and Spain's defence, I'm not sure they're going to score many. Their captain, Benatia, could be a great pick if there are more points available for defenders in your fantasy game that you decide to play. For instance, if blocks and tackles contribute to the amount of points a defender scores, then Benatia could be a great pick, because of course he is a world-class defender in a team who are probably going to have to do a lot of defending against Spain and Portugal. And depending on their price, they have numerous midfielders that could be your budget picks if you really think Morocco may get an upset in this tournament, with the likes of Boussafa, Belhanda and Ziyech filling the middle of the park. They do have some good players. I just don't think overall their team is going to be anywhere near strong enough for the likes of Portugal and Spain. But if we are going to look at players from their side, first of all we got Belhanda with appearances 28, 3 goals, 8 assists, shots per game at 1.3 and an average rating of 7.39. So he's had a great season going into this World Cup. And then we got Hakim Ziyech. I believe he plays for Ajax. He's had 34 appearances, 9 goals and 15 assists, shots per game at 4.9, which is an incredible shots per game score, and an average rating at 8.21. So Morocco do have 2 players coming into this tournament in great form, but there is of course the problem of their group being incredibly difficult for Morocco to get out of. And then finally we have Iran, who came into this World Cup with a record of 6 wins and 4 draws, no defeats. They scored 10 goals and conceded only 2, getting 9 clean sheets out of 10 games. Undefeated in the entire of their qualification, but the best team they played was South Korea. And out of the 2 outsider teams in this group, if I had to put any money on anyone causing an upset, it would be Morocco. However, they do have a very experienced manager in Carlos Queiroz at the helm, a former Real Madrid manager. Maybe organisation could beat the flair of Spain and Portugal. Of course, for me, it was very difficult to pick a player that stands out amongst this Iran side, purely because I don't have the data available that I have for a lot of other players. However, the one that did stand out was Sardar Azmoun. hopefully I said that right. Appearances 13 with 5 goals, 3 assists, shots per game at 1.6 and an average rating at 6.71. In the World Cup qualifications, he did score 7 goals, however, which means he is clearly the focal point of this Iran side. And then before we end the video, we are just going to have a look at how I think this table will finish. And to be honest, I think Spain will have enough to beat Portugal to the #1 spot, getting the easier game in the knockout stages. Portugal getting second. Morocco, if they do beat Iran, maybe getting a result from Portugal or Spain could maybe creep into #2, but I can see them coming third. And then Iran, unfortunately, I think the class in this group is going to overwhelm them and they will come fourth, quite convincingly fourth even, with probably at best a point against a Morocco or a Portugal, maybe even Spain, but I do not see them getting a win in this group. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching the video as always. Also, if you want to support the channel in any way, please consider checking out the links in the description down below, hitting that subscribe button, hitting that like button and hitting that notification bell. All of that helps the channel out so much. As soon as the World Cup fantasy football game is out, I do plan on streaming. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for it to be released. And as soon as that happens, we'll get some live streams up for you guys. I miss you guys. I really do. All that being said, I've been JNO. This has been FPL Today. And remember, it's all about the game.